Good morning. Once again, it's your lawyer's favorite lawyer for Motivational Monday, and I'm back to try to give you some words of inspiration before you go about your day this morning. We'll let the audience build just a little bit, and then we'll jump right into it. So, take just a second here. Good morning. Good morning. My brother Jamil. All right. We got a few people coming on. We'll give it just a second. Miss Vicky, how are you? My brother. All right, I started out with this subject yesterday. I actually spoke at a Black History program, and some of it I thought was very relevant to Motivational Monday. Yesterday, that was a little bit of a religious thing, but I want to deal with the same subject matter and take a little bit of the religious theme out of it and just see where we can go. I started out with, you don't know who you are. And because you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're capable of. You are great. You're great. You just don't know how great you are. And so one of the things I started out with yesterday was this Hans Christian Andersen story. Some of you heard as you're growing up. I know some of the young people nowadays don't even get a chance to hear what they call fairy tales anymore. But there was a story titled The Ugly Duckling. And essentially there was this duck who was, well, he wasn't even a duck, but let's just start out with the premise. It was a duck. It was a mother duck who was sitting on some eggs. One of the eggs was very, very large. So at that point, it should have gave an indication to anybody who wanted to know, or if you're reading the story, that there's something wrong with this particular egg. But all 9 of the duck eggs hatched, and the mother's still sitting on this one large egg. And so as she sits on this egg, it hatches. And of course, the egg doesn't. The hatchling, or what comes out of the egg, is a very homely looking creature. And I want to stop at this point and say, sometimes in your development, you look very, very odd. If you could see yourself after conception, you would say, man, that is an ugly looking clod of whatever. Sometimes your development doesn't mean or doesn't give you indication of what you'll become. And the same thing with this particular bird. The bird was homely looking, was ugly in comparison to ducks. And a lot of times we let people who we are not their particular species, type, or level judge us, and we begin to feel judged based upon their standards. So I want you to think about something. Are you a swan that is being judged by duck standards? And you can take that however you want to take that. But back to the story. This duck, of course, it wasn't the most beautiful duck, because in essence it wasn't a duck. So it was judged by the baby ducks. The baby ducks pushed them to the back. They ridiculed them, things like, why are we all light skinned and you're dark? Why are you, so funny looking? Nobody took up for the bird. And so as the bird was in the farm and around the farm close to the river, it would get ridiculed, talked about, called ugly by the other animals. The hens and the roosters would pick on it. Again, another bird, judging this bird by their standards. So if you're a swan, you can't be judged by chicken standards, because those individuals who don't know what you are or what you're capable of will try to boil you down to what they are. So the chickens, the roosters, the hens ridiculed, picked at it. This duck at the time, or at least thought it was a duck at the time, would always go down to the river and it would look out and see these other birds, majestic birds, wide wingspan, looks like they're floating on the water. And it would idolize those birds and says, I want to be like those birds. And sometimes we do that. We look at great people and we idolize them, and we don't have a reflection of who we are. And some people look at us, especially when you don't have a reflection of who you are, and wonder why you think so little of yourself. Because in essence, this baby duck or swan was looking at other swans, wanting to be like them. I'm imagining what the other swans were looking at. They look back and say, what is that baby swan? Like a swan. I imagine that they were saying, look, do you know who you are? And sometimes us in the community, we have to ask people that. When you see your young brother, your young sister acting savage or petty, sometimes you have to say, do you know? Do you have any idea? Do you see yourself the way you should see it? Because if you saw yourself in the proper light, you wouldn't act that way. And so in essence, this swan went out there, saw these other swans. Nobody told him it was a swan. He just developed. Went back in over the winter into a kind of depression. Thought his life was so bad that instead of getting up and changing it, the swan decided as soon as the ice broke, it was going to go out there and it was going to jump in between these majestic birds, and it was better to be killed by these majestic birds than to stay with these chickens and ducks. And sometimes that's our life. It is better for us to go try to be great and fail than to be great among the chickens and the ducks. I mean, you can be a big fish in a small pond. You can be the individual who is the best video game player in the neighborhood, but at 40, that don't get you much. You can be the person that, has the best, Jordan collection, at 60, but that don't really get you much. See, at some point in life, you got to grow beyond the scope of what you think is cool. If you were the most popular person in high school, how does that get you at 40? I mean, you only get recognition for that when you go back to the high school reunions, and you might not then, because people will say, well, I was young, I was awkward, I'm this and that now. And so he went back in and he figured, I'm going to go out among these majestic birds, and if they kill me, it's better to be killed by these majestic birds than to continue to hang around with these chickens and ducks. And he goes out and tries to go among these birds, and these birds are welcoming him. Like, you're one of us. He still does not have a reflection of himself. He still had not looked to see, what have I become? What did my time by myself in this incubator, my development, this wintertime, this cold period, this hard period, this harsh period, turn me into? And see, sometimes that's where we are. We do not want to develop because development is hard, it's difficult, it takes time, it takes patience. We want it right now, and we'd rather be with the ducks and the chickens than to develop and become a swan. But when he went out and they saw him, they welcomed him into their flock. And at that time, he looked into the water and saw who he had become. And some of you have been working so hard and you don't even see your own development. You've been trying so hard to be great, you don't even see how great you've become. Look at your reflection. See if you're in a different environment. See if you've made a different change in your life. Sometimes you may have turned into a swan from that ugly duck. And for those of you who haven't turned into a swan or do not know if you're a swan, just see who you're hanging around. If you're hanging around the ducks and the chickens and you're always having problems, you're always having drama, they're always talking about what you're trying to do to grow, Every time you have a business or you have a idea, they throw it down and say you can't do that. You a ugly duck. Then maybe you're a swan and you just don't know your greatness. I'll end with this. You are greater than you know. The power that you have is phenomenal if you develop it. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. But the speed of thought is 24 billion miles per second, which means your mind is even faster than light, which means that you are stronger than you believe if you believe yourself to be that. And everything starts out with the belief. You are greater than you think you are, and you are more than they say you are. So with that, I'll end our Monday motivation. I hope you have a great week. For those of you who tune into my legal section, I'll see you Wednesday night. For those of you who only watch Motivation on Monday, I'll catch you next Monday. It's your lawyer's favorite lawyer, aka Mr. Not Guilty. I'll holla.